Okay, so now we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about, I'd like to invite, first of all, Dr. Hamady Diop from the new Partnership for Africa's Development, or NEPAD, in South Africa. And he is going to talk about a strategy for post-harvest loss in West Africa, a regional strategy, aligning a regional strategy with a continental framework. So, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Hamady Diop. I work for the NEPAD agency. I'm tasked with overseeing the program on fisheries and aquaculture. So I will talk about the different commodities that we have uncovered so far since we started this conference, which is fish. Just a quick survey of the room. How many of you like to eat fish? Can you raise your hand? So I see a lot of hands. How many knows what the value of the African fisheries is? I don't see any hand, so I'm assuming that probably we haven't done a good job in terms of advocating about it. So what I'll do today is to discuss a little bit about our continental framework. We are the technical arm of the Africa Union with regard to program implementation. So the ways Africa Union works is that we define or design continental frameworks, and the technical agencies translate those continental frameworks into program and projects, and then we go and support member states with regard to implementation. About a year ago, we did a survey, and we had a publication with the FAO trying to develop a narrative for Africa with regard to fisheries, because the value that we were seeing in the literature was basically estimating the African fisheries value at $2 billion annually. But when we start looking at what was happening on the ground, we realized that the value was about $24 billion. One of the reasons why this number came out this big is that about 80% of what is traded in Africa is done through informal channels. And that's why usually it's not being captured by the statistics. So we looked at about different indicators. So I'll go and give you a small profile on the African fisheries. We have about 200 million people who eat fish as their primary main resources for animal proteins. So if we look at the value, as I indicated, it's amount about 24 billion annually. It contributes to 1.26% of our GDP at the continental level. But if you look at just the ag sector, the contribution of fish to the ag sector is about 6%. It provides livelihood to more than 12 million people. About 6.1 million are direct fishers who do it on a daily basis. About 5.2 million are processors, and you see here basically the importance of post-harvest loss. You have about 23% of the 12 million who are women, so the question of gender also become like really critical when we know that about 91.5% of those 27% are into the processing business. So the gender issue is really, really important with regard to looking at these issues. Now, yesterday, twice I heard in this room about the Malabo Declaration. So in 2014, our head of state met in Equatorial Guinea and made some commitments. So the question that was raised yesterday was that, okay, well, we did it 40 or 50 years ago. Nothing happened. We're doing it again. So what's the new? The new thing this time is that the African head of state have put in place a mechanism that we call the African peer review mechanism, where head of state are accountable for the implementation of their commitment. So now there is an organization, there is a whole an institution that African head of state had put in place, which is called African peer review mechanism, that is based in South Africa, that basically track the progress made with regard to implementation of the commitment. And every 2 years there is a report that is issued, and basically member states are flagged with regard to not implementing what they have committed to. So this is a novelty. So I'm saying maybe before we did not find the right mix, but maybe now we are heading towards the new direction. So one of the commitments that was made last year was to halve post-harvest loss by at least 50% within the next 10 years. And when we talk about post-harvest loss, it's across commodities. Another also commitment that was made is like to end hunger. So all those kind of commitments were made, but now, as I said, the novelty is like the head of state will be held accountable for the implementation of those commitments. The other thing also that was done during Malabo is the adoption of the Pan-African Fishery Policy Framework, a reform strategy. So now we have a continental framework with regard to fisheries that was adopted by the head of state last year, and that we are pushing for implementation. And one of the area of that policy focused specifically on post-harvest loss with regard to fisheries is the section 4.4 on responsible and equitable fish trade and marketing. Then also we have also some other cross-cutting sections like the small-scale fisheries development, the section on sustainable resource uses, the gender issues that all touch somehow to the issue of post-harvest loss. Now what we did is we started working on a pilot program about 4 or 5 years ago before even the strategy got adopted. So it was a joint initiative between FAO and the NIPAD agency with the support of SIDA. So what we did is we looked at like 6 countries that share a water body, and those are basically Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, Togo, Ghana, Burkina Faso, and Mali. So we looked at the cross-border trade issues. We looked at some of the trade figures. We found them very scanty. We looked at all the bottlenecks with regard to fish processing. And so there were like a lot of issues here that basically gave us an idea that what is being lost once the fish enter the value chain was significant. Actually, some numbers were averaging in the 30% of what is lost, either through quality loss, as you can see here, or due to market glut, which you can see here. Some of it were also physical losses. So we looked at also what are the different communities that were the most impacted by those losses along the value chain. And we looked at some of the critical point loss so that we can address them when we develop the strategy. Some of the things that we have seen here is that about 65% of the losses are linked to technology, some good manufacturing practices, lack of infrastructure. But we have also a lot of losses that are linked to social and cultural dimensions, vulnerability issues, lack of proper policies and governance, lack of regulation, and mostly their enforcement. I have a colleague here in the room who has done some review on policies issue with regard to fish trade in West Africa. So when we had a meeting this year in Nairobi, we realized that we had about 188 policies that were developed over the last 5 years, and most of them were not enforced. And the question that came out there was that whether we had a lack of policies or an abstinence of policies. So I'm assuming that here we have really a lack of implementation of policy. We have a lot of good policies that are not being implemented, and those are some of the issues that basically are hindering and impacting also on the post-harvest loss. So we basically looked at some of the drivers of post-harvest loss, and we realized, as I indicated in my previous slide, we have policy issue, we have poor knowledge and handling practices, we have inefficient technologies, we have weak infrastructure, we have poor availability of management, market information system, we have gender issues. Those lead to post-harvest losses that can lead to high prices of available food, that can lead to impoverish communities, that can push them to go into more fishing, that can impact negatively basically the availability of stock, and then the cycle continue and push people, drive people into more poverty as we go. So this basically was a call for a development of a strategy so that we can break that cycle. So what we did is that we developed, we had like a very lengthy, apologize for that. We had a lengthy process of consultation to develop the strategy with a lot of discussion among member states, among different stakeholders. And then we came up with an objective to basically transform the fisheries and aquaculture within the region and also focus on bringing in some new way of looking at post-harvest loss and assisting the member state. So what we did, we developed this document that just got finalized. Actually, we had a meeting in May to validate it, and then we brought in the water basin to take ownership of it, and now we are in the process of publishing it and then going to the next level with funding and so some of the component of the document, we have like about 8 dynamically interrelated priority areas that were identified that address those drivers that I just mentioned here. And we had about 2 cross-cutting beams that deal with resiliency and social protection. And also we had a component that deals with gender issues. So I'm not going to go into the details of the content of those areas that are here. I'm sorry. That are here listed, but if you are interested in looking at the details of this component, we'll be glad to share basically the early draft with you at the end of the presentation. So what we did now in terms of recommendation, the issue is like what should we do next? What we decide on doing is basically to start a campaign on communicating on the strategy at the national level. Try to consolidate some of the available information and also work with our regional integration organization like the ECOWAS to basically link the strategy with the Agricultural Development Bank that they are putting in place. Sensitize the member state via the CADE process. We have what we call the Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program, which is a 10-year cycle program that touches on a lot of different issues, and then that assists countries, member states, to implement some of the programs with regard to fisheries and aquaculture development. So we will try to link up the strategy to that program. And then we will also link up basically this strategy to the ECOWAS policies with regard to free movement of goods and services within the sub-region. The other thing also we are doing at the moment is that we are working with a set of universities, particularly the University of Cote d'Ivoire, the University of Ghana in Legon, with a lot of students going into the field and collecting data to improve some of our knowledge with regard to what's going on. And then the second step also would be to look at the impact of smoking, for example, on health. So there is an ongoing study that is happening right now with the University of Cote d'Ivoire. We are looking also on efficient technologies that we can provide to the woman with regard to smoking fish. So that's also is a practice that is going on. So these are the few elements I want to share with you. I think I will stick to my time and allow a few questions. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for questions, please. Can we turn the lights up, please? There's one question down here in the front that I can see.
I have the mic.
Where's our microphones?
I have the mic. Can I
Oh, you
start?
have the mic, okay.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation, and it's good to know that there are targets for reducing post-harvest losses by the African governments. But I just want to ask, just like before, there was commitment by the same governments to give some percentage of GDP to agriculture, and that didn't happen. Most of the governments didn't commit anything, and nothing happened. And now, in this case, we have targets, and you're saying there's a way to ensure that they achieve these targets. Who is going to hold them accountable? And if they don't meet these targets, is there punishment, or how are they going to be made to achieve this target?
That's a good question. I will just say that with regard to fisheries, if you look at the presentation, at the beginning I said the fishery is contributing to 1.26% of the African GDP, but it is contributing to 6% to the agricultural GDP. One of the commitments that was made about in Abuja in 2015 was that fish contribute at least 6%. So with that commitment already, we saw that there is a progress. The second thing I can say, I mean, if a head of state make a commitment and he doesn't respect it, I don't think we can shoot him out. So the only thing we can do is take him to his peer and have a peer pressure. The NIPAD, when the NIPAD does its reporting, the NIPAD report to the head of state. So if a head of state is sitting among his peer, and then it's highlighted that he did not meet his commitment, I think the pressure is there for him to go back and ask his government why the commitment was not met. So I think that's the only answer I can give with regard to that response.
Okay, I'm afraid we're out of time. Thank you very much.